Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. This is Catherine Carrigan. I am your co-host. You can find out about me at catherinecarrigan.com, unlimitedenergynow.com, and whatissocialmediatoday.com. I am a medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. My new book, The Difference Between Pain and Suffering, has now been on at #1 on Amazon in the US for the past 15 days. It's been #1 in nutrition for cancer prevention, #1 in medicine and psychology, and #1 in alternative medicine reference. Now today I'm really happy to introduce you all to one of my favorite people, holistic health and fitness coach, Cris Ramis. Welcome, Cris.
Thank you, Catherine. Nice to be here.
Now, for our listeners and viewers, will you share your website information?
Yeah, well, my website is ramis-hf.com. I've also got a business page on Facebook, and that's I'm only on those two. I'm not as quite spread out as your good self. I'm not a published author yet, so.
Okay, and can you share with everyone, because you're in the UK, where you're located in the UK?
Yeah, I'm in Lee-on-Sea, Westcliff-on-Sea, in southeast Essex, in England.
Okay, well, the reason I wanted you on our show, in addition to the fact that you're one of my favorite people, is that you are what I would term a natural bodybuilder. And you've done bodybuilding your whole life. So can you share for us, how long have you done bodybuilding?
I probably picked up my first piece of resistance training kit in the mid-80s when I was, say, 13 or 14. We had a bit of fitness kit lying around the house. I can't even remember how we got in the house, but it was there. I picked it up, started using it, and being 13, 14, hormones raging, I kind of got some very swift results just from simply, I won't say playing with it, because you can't really play with this stuff and not hurt yourself, but just using it on a daily basis, improvising. I didn't know anything about training at all. I had no training role models whatsoever. And around about the same time, I started playing American football over here. And the two went hand in hand, weight training plus American football. And I suddenly, hey presto, found two sporting endeavours I was actually quite good at. Whereas up until that point, I had no athletic leanings whatsoever. The sports I was taught at school, I was just no good at. So it kind of went from there, really.
So how many years have you been practicing as a bodybuilder?
To call myself a full-on bodybuilder, I'd say about 30 years. I think 1987, I joined my first gym and started, getting instruction from people and learning, really. And that's never stopped. I was thinking about this today, things that I've learned this year about training specific to strength training, bodybuilding, etc. Yeah, it never stops. So 30 years, I would say, since 1987.
That's amazing. Now, Cris Ramis, you are a holistic fitness coach. So you're going to be doing things naturally, just like we do here at the Natural Healing Show. In your opinion, what is successful bodybuilding?
I think longevity, health and longevity. When I was younger, the difference between how I train now and how I trained when I was younger, and just, full of my first flush of enthusiasm, this is something I'm good at, and, you dive into it and it just becomes an obsession almost. The difference between then and now is back then, all I was interested in to a greater extent was how big and strong can I get and how quickly can that happen? Albeit doing it naturally, drug-free. Now, or I won't say now, it happened about 10, 15 years ago when I started getting more into holistic health. My focus is, yes, I still want size and strength, but I want health and fitness beyond that. So if someone comes up to me and says, fellow coach comes up with a routine, and this routine's guaranteed to pack on X amount of muscle in X amount of days, and I'll look through it and I'll be interested, but if it's not going to enhance my health at all and potentially actually have a harmful or negative effect on my health, I'm just not interested. It's got to enhance my health as well as my physique, because I think as human beings, we're a hell of a lot more than a big pair of biceps and a big chest or a big pair of thighs or whatever. There's got to be more to it than just the physical side of it. So if you train for 10 years and have a fantastic physique and then burn yourself out for whatever reason because you've given yourself a crippling injury by not training properly, not training sensibly, training out of balance, that's not successful bodybuilding. For me, bodybuilding is a lifestyle choice. It's something I can't imagine ever not doing. You know, it's part of me. It's something I enjoy. It's brought so much benefit to my life in terms of from starting out, it was self-confidence. You know, now we're talking about health. I could do more now at 46 with my body in the gym than I could at 21. Because
that's impressive.
Well, my approach has changed considerably, to put it mildly. So.
Okay, now you and I, one of the commonalities that we all share here at the Natural Healing Show is that we want to do things drug-free as much as humanly possible.
Yep.
So, Cris, what are the health dangers of steroids? And of course, I just wrote a book about, you know, how to get out of pain without drugs, and yet there's so many bodybuilders who are turning to drugs in order to develop the size. So what are the health dangers of all these drug approaches to bodybuilding?
I mean, I'm only going to be, I'll speak from, when I say experience, I will speak about what I've seen it do to friends who decided to go the drug route. You know, I'm not going to, there's plenty of websites out there people can go and look at and find out, and you'll get people who say, no, I've never had any of those side effects. I've never had, you know, I took this, that, and the other for this many years, and I'm fine. And maybe they are. There's always people who are exceptions to the rule. I mean, I've seen people. The obvious thing is the mood swings, which, you know, is it a health risk? Well, it depends what happens when you lose your temper. I mean, I've seen people who are unstable to begin with, quite honestly, take drugs, and it just sends them over the edge. And you've got people who are more angry, more aggressive. I've been in gyms where punch-ups have broken out. It's just, I can look back and laugh at it now, but at the time it was just insanity. I've seen people just, 1 minute they're walking, you know, 1 week they're in the gym, striding around like they own the place because they're feeling so good, so high. And the next week, you know, why aren't they here? Why aren't they training? And you find out they've been hospitalized because, you know, they've had some problem with their liver or their kidneys or their heart. I mean, before I opened my studio, my own business in 2005, I probably spent a good 20 years or so hanging around gyms. So I met a lot of people locally. So I've seen a lot of things happen. I've seen people change. Personalities change. The worst ones I saw, I've actually lost friends, people who have died as a result. And to say, I hesitate to say as a result because, you know, when they have a post-mortem, it's something like, oh, congenital heart disease or whatever. Maybe it was congenital. But you can't tell me that their use of everything they were taking and everything they were on helped. And it's, in a way, it's a little bit painful for me to remember because these people I was very close to. But, you know, they made their choice. And so it's going to run the gamut from, you know, mood swings, getting more violent, aggressive, or becoming that way if you're not that way in the first place, to something more serious. We're looking at organ failure. You know, we know the body's going to naturally shut down its own testosterone production because it's getting more than it should be getting. So what's the comeback from that when you finish taking your course of steroids and you should be finishing taking them? Something you can't stay on for for life, because you are asking for, you know, serious health issues. It's like any drug use, whether it's, you know, for some pharmaceutical purpose that you're, you know, they've all got side effects. This we know. So stuff like that. And that's just the steroids kind of thing. I mean, when people start going with the growth hormone and things like that, that's a whole new dimension. And what kind of things they're on nowadays, I couldn't even tell you, because I'm so far out of the loop, not being in gyms, not hanging around with people that, you know, and we respected each other. I mean, it was their choice to do those things, and they respected me for staying clean. It was just, these are friends we're talking about. But, you know, maybe I rambled a little bit there, but it kind of brought up a lot of things for me. So when I was thinking back, stuff I haven't thought about a long time, people that I realise how much I miss them now, because they did what they chose to do, you know?
Yeah, I had a very good friend here in Atlanta who was a bodybuilder, and he actually died of a stroke in his 30s.
Yeah, crazy.
I remember he came to me as a client, you know, a couple of days before he died. And I gave him very specific instructions. One of the things I said, you have to stop working out like immediately. And he didn't listen to me. And then 2 days later, he had a stroke. So very upsetting.
Yeah.
And yet there are people like you who can look good, feel good naturally, no drugs. And that's why we're having you here on the Natural Healing Show.
Cool.
So let's talk about breathing and respiration. Now, usually, you know, those of us who are yogis and Qigong and Tai Chi practitioners, we're all about the breath. How does breath help with bodybuilding?
Well, it goes back to health. You know, for me, successful bodybuilding is linked intrinsically to health. If the bodybuilding you're doing isn't making you healthier, then I wouldn't class it as being successful. You're not about longevity. It's about the short-term gain as opposed to the long-term gain. So for me, one of the best things I ever did, I mean, I first learned about breathing and its importance from a man called Paul Chek way back in 2000. And it's one of the best things I ever learned, because as far as he's concerned, it is the fundamental number one thing in terms of importance to improve your health is breathe correctly, breathe diaphragmatically. And somebody else I've learned a lot from this year, a chap called Dax Moy, he's a UK-based coach. I did a course with him, and he reaffirmed for me how important breathing is in terms to health and function. So if you break it down, how long can you survive without oxygen? Not very long before something pretty drastic is going to happen to you. But with every single client I take in, when I assess them, I think in 20 years of working with clients and 15, 16, I'm actually looking at people's breathing before I look at anything else. I have yet to assess one client who had an optimal breathing pattern, i.e. been able to breathe down into the diaphragm, in and out through the nose, so they're filtering the oxygen that comes in and out. Most people, I said the majority breathe into their chest. They're only filling their lungs to 30% capacity, not even down into the stomach. So every breath, they're not breathing as deeply as possible. They're not bathing their body with O2. And so the metabolism is subpar. The energy systems are underpowered. Apart from that, you've got the structural aspect. So you and I both know if you breathe in diaphragmatically, our lungs are filled to capacity. That means your core is stronger. So you've got the energetic metabolic benefit of breathing in diaphragmatically, and then you've got the structural benefit. So if I breathe in deeper, basically I'm going to be stronger because I've got more energy and I've got more structural integrity. Now that, coupled with learning to use your core muscles properly, means, you know, you've got that non-compressible cylinder of air, that which your torso is meant to be. So I would put the fact that I know how to breathe properly and use my core properly, and let's not even get to into the debate about how to turn your core on, but you know, it works for me, what I do. That's a whole other seminar, isn't it? It's a whole other interview. But because I put those two things together and mastered those, even if I do say so myself, that partly explains why I can do more in the gym now than I ever could before. You know, before I learned these techniques, and I had to relearn how to breathe properly, especially when it comes to to breathing. I know I set my PBs in things like the deadlift and the squat after I'd learned to breathe properly, set my core properly. So
PB being your personal best.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, and you know, I was strong before, but I was obviously, it's that idea of, you're always going to use your muscles to lift the weights. But I mean, when I say I was muscling the weight up, it was more grunt and pure effort rather than technique and form, and with focus on the breathing and focus on the core. So I was stressing, you know, certain muscle groups were taking far more stress than they were meant to, and than they do now when I lift. I know it's a much more safe lift than it's ever been before because I've learnt to breathe properly.
So, Cris, for our listeners and viewers, how do we need to breathe when we are lifting weights?
Well, it's going to vary from exercise to exercise, and I have broken down every exercise over the years because, apart from the fact it's my job, it's been a passion of mine, training-wise. If I'm giving myself to something wholeheartedly, I want to do it to the best of my ability. And if I'm training other people to do it, I need to conduct that kind of research on myself. I'm my own best guinea pig. So, for example, I remember having a debate with someone who was, for a time, my boss about how people should breathe in a shoulder press. And he'd been taught by sports scientists that it's, you breathe out as you press. And I begged to differ with that. I said, because wait a minute, if I've got the load here, here's where I take my big belly breath in, breathe in deep, inflate the belly, belly button in to activate the core, hold the breath, press, and breathe out on the way down, because this is the easier part of the press, so I don't mind decompressing my spinal column through the easy part. Why do I want to breathe out through the hard part? My spine's loaded, whether I'm sat down on a bench or a Swiss ball or stood up, and I always do my press in standing up because it's more functional. We had an interesting debate about that, and in the end we just agreed to differ. But in 15 years of teaching people to shoulder press like that, no one has ever hurt their low back shoulder press in that way. It's going to change for the bench press. Bench press, I breathe out on the way up, but I breathe in at the top, hold my breath on the way down, out on the exhalation. With lat exercises, it's completely inverted to the way that I was taught years ago. It's always taught out in gyms, breathe out on the exertion, breathe out on the exertion. It's just a really simple way of teaching people to breathe. But it's not actually optimal. Pulling movements, whether it's a lat pull down or a pull up, you're going to start with the arms extended, big belly breath in, hold the breath, pull, regardless of the grip you're using, and then breathe out on the way back. Why? Because I want to stay strong core-wise through the hardest part of the movement, and then breathe out through the decompressive part of the movement. Things like deadlift, I'll take 2 breaths per rep. Breathing at each end of the rep range whilst keeping my core strong throughout. So, to go through all the exercises, it's difficult because there's so many of them, but as a general rule, breathing out on the exertion is only correct for, maybe half the movements, if that. So a lot varies on where's the tension point, where's the toughest part of the exercise. Do you want to breathe out through that? How's your spine going to be held? Is it going to be held strong by you breathing out through that part, or is it going to be made weak when you really don't need it to be weak? And shoulder press was the blindingly obvious one to me. Bicep curls, well, breathe however you want. That's not going to matter too much, but it all depends where that spine is, in relation to gravity. So,
So you're very much like a yoga teacher in that when I teach yoga, I'm cueing the breathing with the movement.
All the time. The time. If I had a mantra that I say to my clients over and over again, it's breathe, set your core, then move. I've seriously thought of putting a poster up on the wall in big, huge letters, just pointing at it, because that's the first thing that goes with people. They forget, they get into a rhythm and the breathing's gone. Or they're so keen to get the exercise done for whatever reason, whether it's self-improvement, or this is a personal best I'm going for, or this is a new weight, or I hate this exercise so much, I just want it done as soon as possible, that the breathing goes. And I have to slow them down. No, you can do the exercise fast, but only as fast as you can breathe properly. So yeah, we're on the same page.
All right. Now, how much water do we need to drink every day? And if you'll talk in general, and then also for people who are bodybuilding, because I know your requirements totally change when you.
Absolutely.
I've got my kombucha here, so I'm drinking a kombucha.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, again, this was something that I was turned on to by Paul Chek many years ago, and it stuck with me, and I've always followed that advice ever since. It's worked for me. His advice was, whatever your body weight is in pounds, divide that figure into 2 and have that many fluid ounces of water a day. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I need 100 fluid ounces of water on a daily basis. So that's just your minimum requirement as far as I'm concerned, and as far as Paul Chek would be concerned. Now, if it's a warm day, well, you're going to need possibly half a litre to a litre more, depending on what your day-to-day activity is. Even if you're sedentary, I would argue you're going to sweat more, so you're going to need more fluids, more water. And if you're working out, you're going to need another half a litre to a litre a day. And if it's hot and you're working out, well, you know, it could go up to, it could be double what you normally take in. So the environment, the intensity of your workout and the duration of it, and how much you sweat as an individual is always going to have an impact on how much you get through. I mean, I probably consume 3 litres a day minimum, regardless of the weather, regardless of how I'm training, and that could go up to 4 litres in the summer months. And I always put a pinch of either sea salt or Himalayan crystal salt in every glass of water that I drink, because that helps your body absorb the water rather than it just flush you through and strip you out of minerals. You're adding in healthy minerals to your body by doing that. So we're not talking about getting just your common or garden supermarket table salt. That's poison. So we're talking about getting Himalayan crystal salt or Celtic sea salt or some kind of sea salt that is living. You know, it's more of an alive salt, unprocessed, raw, if you will. Pop that in your water. Just a pinch, I mean, the tip of a teaspoonful. You know, we're not talking about heaping it up either. Just to make sure that my body absorbs their water. You hear about marathon runners, you know, drinking too much water and then collapsing because they flushed themselves out of sodium and potassium. So, you know, that's partly the reason. Is the reason for adding that sea salt or crystal salt in.
And I know that the Himalayan pink salt is really good even for people with high blood pressure.
Yes, I've had that with people. I mean, you know, if you want to talk success stories, getting people off blood pressure meds with the agreement of their doctor. You know, it wasn't sort of like me saying, "Yeah, stop taking your blood pressure meds, you'll be fine." It was, "We'll try this, see what it does for your blood pressure. You know, then speak to your doctor about reducing it down." So, you know, you've got to work with your doctor on these things. Let's keep them on board. And luckily, these clients had open-minded GPs who were, you know, behind them 100%. So, it almost feels like a crazy thing to say. You've got high blood pressure, so you need Himalayan crystal salt. What? Salt's going to raise my blood pressure, isn't it? Well, not if it's the right kind of salt and you're drinking it in this. So,
now, what about sleep for recovery? How important is it for bodybuilders to get adequate rest to recover and restore their muscles?
Just fundamental. Absolutely fundamental. And I hold my hands up and say, this is someone, because I'm a night owl, I sometimes get I'm really productive in the evenings. So I can get online and I can churn through stuff. And before I know it, it can be 1, 2 o'clock, but I'm not feeling tired. Now, it doesn't happen a lot very often. I have got a handle on it and it's just right. It's 10:30, get yourself into bed. You know, you train better when you've got more sleep. But what's the point of having great nutrition, a routine that's working for you, and you're not sleeping enough to actually recover from your training efforts? I mean,
so how much sleep do bodybuilders need? Do bodybuilders need more sleep than regular people?
Potentially. It depends very much on the individual, you know, and how much. It depends also on the cycle of training, the kind of training someone is using. I mean, I've experimented with so many different routines over the last 30 years. And I mean, I've got training logs going back for 25 of those years. So I can tell you how I was training since 1992. I've got a written record of everything, which if a bodybuilder wants to be successful, I totally recommend having a training log so they can monitor their performance. And if you want to check the value of sleep, well, try burning the candle at both ends for a month and see what that does to your results in the gym. Is it working for you? Are you making progress? Well, great. That's brilliant for you. I don't know if that would work for me. In fact, if I want to guarantee an illness, there's 3 things that I need to do in some kind of combination. It's either train too much, eat too little, or sleep too little. And it's sleep that will get me pretty much every time. If I'm undersleeping, as it were, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get ill, cough, cold, something like that. And I'm furious when that happens because I should know better.
So, Cris, what do you advise your clients as far as sleep? Like, what time do they need to go to bed? What time, how long should they be sleeping in the morning?
Well, again, I think we have to respect people's individuals' time clocks. So some people love going to bed at 9:30 and getting up at 5:30 in the morning, which to me is just a nightmare. I couldn't imagine doing that. If I can be in bed 10:30, 11 o'clock, getting up at 7, that's great for me. The people that I've studied with said from 10:30 to 10:30 till 2:30. So 10:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. The body's focused on physical repair. Then after that, for the next 4 hours till 6:30, it's mental repair. So I tell all my clients, look, it's that old adage of, an hour slept before midnight is worth 2 hours slept after midnight. Something along those lines. I remember that being told to me years ago. And it holds very true for bodybuilders. And anyone in that, it's just health again. It all goes back to health, Catherine. General health principles apply, just as much, even more so to bodybuilders because the extra stress they're putting themselves through. Although this is stress by choice, and we know the difference between, choosing to stress yourself out is different to having stress thrust upon you and not being able to cope with it or handle it. But, I think I've known bodybuilders get by on 6 hours a night. That's not me. I'm an 8 hours a night guy. If I don't sleep that much, something's going to suffer somewhere, or I'll have a cat nap in the afternoon to boost myself.
Now, I would love for you to share with our listeners and viewers about your ideal exercises to get the best results in the gym. So when you're training people in the gym, what kind of exercise choices do you recommend most often? Okay,
well, bodybuilding is all about resistance training. And I prefer to use that phrase rather than weight training because my female clients, if I mention weight training, they can get a bit panicky. They think they're suddenly going to bulk up overnight. If only it were that easy. So resistance training, all my first time clients, my newer clients will be mainly doing body weight stuff. I've got no machines in my gym that train isolation groups, train groups in isolation. I've got a couple of calf raise machines and they're for me because I bodybuild, so I want to train my calves that way. But other than that, I've got cable systems. People can do lat pull down, which is a great way to introduce lat training to them. I've got an assisted chin and dip machine, so we can get we can get the weakest of clients doing dips within reason or pull-ups within reason. It's body weights, it's free weights, barbells, dumbbells, cables, gymnastic rings are great. The look on people's faces when they say, I'm going to use those. I said, yeah, you'll use them, but we get them using them at an incline, across gravity, and they're pleasantly surprised that they can do this stuff. The last thing that I would use for folks to train is machines, whether they're bodybuilders or not, because it's that whole idea of does what you do in the gym carry over to making you healthy and stronger and fitter and look better outside of the gym. There's no point doing a routine that is great for the gym, but then you get out of the gym and you've got a totally dysfunctional body that is used to being trained on machines. None of your stabilizers work properly. I'll give a little insight into one client who will obviously, for legal reasons, remain nameless, and he still trains with me, bless him. He first signed up with me about 10 years ago, and I told him at that time. Took him through a full postural assessment, gave him a core training program, and said, "You're coming to me because you want to lose body fat and be in shape." And one of his big things was, he wanted to look better. Really had it in his head, look better. And that was his one goal. Everything else didn't really matter to him that I was coming out with. And he totally ignored the mobilization work, the flexibility work, the posture work, the core work. And I just said to him after a while, I said, "One day you will break." I said, "One day you will break." I said, "I will stake." I said, "That's my professional opinion. You're going to break one day." And I said, "Hopefully it won't be in the gym during one of my sessions." I said, "And the chances are it won't be, because while you're in here, I'm coaching you. I'm telling you, breathe, set your core, then move." I said, "But one day you will break." And he did. And he didn't just do it once to himself. He did it several times before he finally realized, yeah, you know what I've got to do? I've really got to start doing this core work and this mobilization work. And it took him, a disc injury to actually listen to me, but we all make our choices in life, But I'd always trained him with free weights, body weight, cables, dumbbells, barbells. And the idea was that hopefully it would carry over into the real world, so that when his day-to-day activities, that strength would present itself.
So Cris, how did he actually injure himself? What was he doing wrong?
Oh my goodness.
Great.
Well, this is it. What he was doing was, I'm trying to think of the first time he hurt himself. I think he was on holiday, swimming pool, and just larking around, horseplay with his kid, throwing him around in the water, and his abdominal wall just buckled, basically.
And what was he neglecting in his health routine that caused him to be vulnerable?
It was, well, apart from not doing any kind of mobility work, posture work, flexibility work, and most importantly, core work, and not thinking about that other than when we were together. And it doesn't matter if someone's seeing me 6 days a week, and the most people train with me at the moment is 3. That's 3 hours out of 168. If for those other 165 hours, you just don't even think about what you do in the gym and make it carry over into the real world, I can't do anything to help you. So,
okay.
Plus the stress levels. This is someone who would just work so many hours because his goal was financial freedom, independence. And even though, the lifestyle he enjoys is beyond what the majority of people I know enjoy, it wasn't enough. And it was just stress upon stress upon stress. And then, of course, cardiac low back. You and I have spoken about that before. Yeah. So it was that situation. It was his body saying, you know what, I will give you a back injury so that you have to calm the hell down and reevaluate. And I will keep doing this to you until you listen to the signals that I'm giving you rather than ignore them. So
there you have it. Now, if you are training someone who's a total beginner, mm-hmm. or if someone out there who's listening or watching wants to start bodybuilding, how long should we start out being in the gym? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes? What do you think is an optimal training session?
Less is more, really, because if you're a beginner, it's all about the nervous system. How well coordinated are you to do the exercises that are in that you will see a lot of people doing in the gym? And that's why the machines are so popular, because it takes the nervous system out of the equation. If you just got to move a muscle from A to B on a machine, you haven't got to stabilize it, you haven't got to think too much about, it's a hell of a lot harder to do a dumbbell shoulder press or a dumbbell chest press, or indeed a press up, than it is to sit on a chest press machine or a shoulder press machine. So you're always looking at doing compound movements that use the most muscle mass at any one time. That's whether you want to build muscle or strip body fat. The more bang for your buck exercises, or big bang exercises as certain coaches call them.
Okay.
Go on.
So if I'm starting out as a beginner, should I train 20 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, 45 minutes? What's the length of time do you recommend somebody be in the gym with these big bang exercises and free weights?
Well, when I train someone, if you're talking someone who is a complete novice, yeah, my first workout with them takes roughly 20 minutes. And I pick 6 exercises that cover all the major muscle groups of the body. And I pick a style of exercise that is very descended, so that they're going to feel the exercise, but they're not going to be crippled by muscle soreness for the next few days. Okay, because one of the things I've learned over the years, that when people come to me and say, this is a true one. I had a guy come to see me, he was 45, and I said, okay, so when was the last time you actually did any exercise? He said, when I was 15, it was my last school PE lesson. So I said, right, well, today's workout will be very, very easy, because this was a man who sat for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day in his life, when it was work, traveling to and from work. You know, he worked on the railways. So he would drive to the train station, get out of the car, get into the train, get a seat, go into work, sit down for the next 8, 9, 10 hours and repeat on the way back. So he was very, very sedentary. So it's very, very basic exercise. If it's talking, you know, body weight squat, just get used to doing that squat pattern. A hip extension off the floor, so you're getting used to doing some kind of very basic bend pattern. An incline press up, so he's working across gravity rather than 100% against gravity. Some kind of basic standing cable row, a lat pull down of some kind, and a shoulder press. And I don't touch any isolation work because it's just too much. And the first session he came, we did 1 set, and I just made sure he understood the breathing and the form was everything and the weight was nothing. And we just built on that. 2 sets the next time, 3 sets the next time. And then when he's got a base, we can start making things a bit more expansive. But if you're a beginner, you've got to start out gentle. Otherwise, you won't be walking properly for a week.
Yeah. And when people are even at their peak, how often, you know, for the peak athletes and the peak bodybuilders, how often do you recommend that they train, and how long should their training sessions be?
I mean, again, there's so much disagreement on this amongst coaches whose work I've read. Personally, I try and get out of the gym in and out in an hour, from the first working set to the last. I think that works well for me. Maybe a couple of workouts will go to 60, 75 minutes. I train four times a week currently. That's working really well for me now. And I track it religiously. If I'm not getting stronger from week to week, there's something wrong. I'm overtraining. I could be undertraining. There's that possibility. Maybe it's the sleep. Maybe it's lack of nutrition. It's difficult to pin it down unless you're tracking everything as I do. It's going to vary from person to person. I've seen guys grow off 3 days a week, 2 days a week. Then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. Friends and colleagues doing 6 days a week. I've done that for a bit and I can cope with that for a while. Then my body kind of goes, you know, I start getting niggles. So, you know, to give you one size fits all, Catherine, is so difficult. You know, I've met some guys who are workhorses. I mean, is that different? Do you want to train like Arnold Schwarzenegger? Well, you can if you're built like him with his kind of frame and his capacity. But if you're built like Franco Columbu, you know, his best friend, who's half his size but a similar build, maybe you're not going to manage 6 days a week like he used to, twice a day. So, you know, and then also, how stressed are you outside of the gym? You know, is life really good? Are you happy? You got not too much going on, in which case maybe you can take more workload in the gym. If you've got loads going on outside of it, maybe you better cut your workouts back and just in and out in 30 minutes, job done, tick over until life has calmed down a bit. There's so many variables that impact on it.
Now, Cris, when you're training women, are there any particular adaptations that you make for ladies who lift weights in the gym or do resistance training?
Adaptations. Well, the rep range, that changes. Most of the ladies that come to see me, you know, all of the ladies, they just want to tone up, as they tell me. And I'll say, well, toning up and building muscle are exactly the same thing. You're stripping some body fat and you're going to add some lean tissue. That's what you're going to do. We're just not going to do it using heavy weights and low reps, because, you know, that's going to turn them off. It's going to shut them down mentally. You know, in terms of exercise choices, no, they'll pretty much do everything that I think is safe for them to do once they've built up to doing it. So, I've had one of my previous clients, she was in her 60s and she'd deadlift and she would squat and she would do all those kind of exercises, pull-ups and stuff like that. She was an exception to the rule. She is, I've got one other lady on my books currently. She's a 2-time Marathon des Sables winner. And again, we train her to be as strong as possible because that's what she needs to enhance her running. So she'll deadlift, she'll squat, she'll dip, she'll chin up, she'll pull up, she'll do all those big compound movements, shoulder pressing, rowing, all of it. So for those people who require similar kind of training to a bodybuilder like myself, it's the same exercises. For those female clients that just want to tone up, loosen body fat, the exercises are descended and the reps are a little bit higher, 8 to 10, stuff like that.
So in general, for our listeners and viewers who just want to be healthy, but we want to add in resistance training and weight training, you recommend 2 times a week, 3 times a week? And how long should our training sessions be? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour?
Yeah, I'd say twice a week, 45 to 60 minutes at the most. And I've seen people improve upon that. And as long as everything else, all things being equal, that their nutrition's on point and they're getting in some good interval training for the cardiovascular effects and the metabolic raising effect and fat burning effect, twice a week would be the minimum I would recommend, 45 to 60 minutes. So I always tell my clients, if they come to see me once a week, you've got to be doing this at least one other time a week, if not twice. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or some permutation of that would be optimal for someone who is not specifically a bodybuilder who wants to maximize their muscle gains and their strength. So yeah, 2 to 3 times a week, 45 to 60 minutes, no more than.
Wonderful. Now, all this after 30 years of bodybuilding, obviously you've developed a specific mindset behind what you do. What is your mindset, if you could sort of describe briefly what your philosophy is?
Well, having worked on understanding myself a lot over the decades and working out what my value system, what my values are, I've sussed out, it should be no great surprise to anyone who knows me, that health is my number one value in life. I must be as healthy as I possibly can be. And that's because I want to maximize my potential as a human being in the time that I've got on the planet. So my bodybuilding philosophy is very simple, is that as long as the training that I'm doing is enhancing my health, everything else will follow that. So I will lay down more lean muscle tissue. I will get stronger. I will get as big as I possibly can do within the confines of a drug-free training protocol that I use. So the mindset, it's just, I don't set limits to myself, I just set targets. And as long as I've done my best to achieve that target, that goal, even if it doesn't happen, I'm happy with it. There's that balance to it. Whereas I think sometimes we can let the ego, who's controlling you? Are you running your mind, or is your mind running you, or is your ego running you? And the ego is the bit that won't accept, I can't do this. And that's great up to a point, but there must be a point where you go, well, actually, I'm just not physically strong enough to do this drug-free. So it's not going to happen without me breaking myself, and that's not going to happen either. So we just accept the limitation whilst always trying to push just enough,
And you mentioned, Cris, that for decades you've kept a training journal, so you keep track of what you're doing. So what do you recommend that our clients and listeners and viewers write down in their training journal? What variables do they actually need to track?
Well, very simply, I'll write the date, the muscle groups that I'm training that day, the exercises I'm doing, the weight I'm using, the reps I achieve, and I make little notes about how hard those sets were for me to get. So if my goal for a certain, if I wanted to hit 3 sets of 5 on a certain weight in the deadlift and I get it, that's fine. But I need to make a note to myself whether I got it so comfortably that I can add maybe a couple of kilos next session, or whether it's, no, you need to stick with this weight because you only just got it. And the only other thing that I'm keeping record of is how long the workout took me, because I want to track whether my conditioning is improving along with my strength. And of course, I'll periodically have someone take my muscle measurements to see how I'm progressing. If people want to weigh themselves, I'm actually a fan of people weighing themselves, but I tell all my clients, if you're going to do it, get on the scales at the same time of day. I said, preferably first thing in the morning when you've got up, gone to the bathroom, get on the scales and do it at the same time every day and take a 7-day average and then work out. Take that, your 7-day average, as your weight, because it can go up and down the weight based on your hydration, based on how many carbs you might have had in a certain day. I mean, my record for putting on scale weight, as I will call it, because we know it wasn't real weight, was I put on 8 pounds in a day, because I went from doing low carb to it being Christmas Day, going round my girlfriend's for Christmas dinner, stuffing myself stupid with all healthy stuff, but it was all very carb heavy compared to what I had been having. And then I get on the scales the next day and it's like, oh, look at that. We're half a stone heavier. How the hell did that happen? Well, we know how it happened. I didn't actually put on half a stone, but it's just the water that's come in because my muscles have gone, oh, carbs, great. And they hold on to it with the water that goes with it. So those are the variables that I'd be looking at.
And do you also, in your training journal, do you also, Cris, write down what you're eating?
No, that I don't do. That I don't do because it's pretty constant with me. That's something I actually carry around in my head, to be quite honest with you. But for someone who's starting out, having a diet journal would be a really good idea to go with the training journal. You know, a diet log, nutrition log, whatever you want to call it. And I know some people that do the both. I know some people, bodybuilders, who will make a note of every single calorie that goes in to their bodies. And if that's what works for them, that's great. When my brother got in shape 5 years ago for his bodybuilding shows, when he competed in his drug-free shows, he would just log everything. Now, I haven't done that in the past. I've chosen not to. It's enough for me to do the training log. But if someone else might thrive on that discipline,
yeah,
but not me.
Not you. Cris, Ramis, if you will share your website again with everyone.
Yeah, cool. It's www.ramis, that's RAMIS -hf.com.
And Cris Ramis is a holistic fitness coach in the UK, and you can find him, again, share your location for people who want to work with you locally.
Yeah, I'm in Southeast Essex in the UK. My studio is in Westcliff-on-Sea.
And you can train with Cris to learn how to bodybuild naturally, without drugs, without steroids. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. This is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com, unlimitedenergynow.com, and whatissocialmediatoday.com. Thanks so much, and we want to empower you to lift weights, include resistance training in your health program, and be healthy naturally. Take care, and we'll see you soon.